the Holy Gospel as it is recorded in Luke. When the time came for Elizabeth to deliver, she gave birth to a son. When her neighbors and relatives heard that God had been merciful to her, they shared her joy. When all had assembled for the circumcision on the 8th day, they intended to name the baby after his father, Zachariah. But his mother spoke up. "No, he is to be called John." They pointed out to her, "But no one in your family has this name." Then they made signs to the father to find out what he wanted the child to be named. The father asked for a writing tablet and wrote, "His name is John." They were astonished. Immediately Zachariah's mouth was opened and his tongue was loosed, and he began to speak in praise of God. The neighbors were all filled with awe, and throughout the hill country of Judea, people were talking about these events. All who heard the news stored it in their hearts and said, "What will this child turn out to be?" For God's hand was with him. Zachariah, John's father, was filled with the Holy Spirit and prophesied. "Blessed are you, the Most High God of Israel, for you have visited and redeemed your people. You have raised up a mighty Savior for us in the house of David, as you promised through the mouths of your holy ones, the prophets of ancient times, salvation from our enemies and from the hands of all our foes. You have shown mercy to our ancestors by remembering the holy covenant you made with them, the oath you swore to Sarah and Abraham, granting that we, delivered from the hands of our enemies, might serve you without fear, in holiness and justice, in your presence all our days. And you, my child, will be called the prophet of the Most High, for you will go before our God to prepare the way for the promised one, giving the people the knowledge of salvation through forgiveness of their sins. Such is the tender mercy of our God, who from on high will bring the rising sun to visit us, to give light to those who live in darkness and the shadow of death, and to guide our feet into the way of peace." In the meantime, the child grew up and became strong in spirit. He lived out in the desert until the day he appeared in Israel. The Gospel of Christ. Please be seated. Let me begin, dear friends, by addressing you in the same way that the anonymous gospel storyteller that we know as Luke addressed his congregation. For I trust that each and every one of you are indeed Theophilus, lover of God, from the Greek words theo, which means God, and philos, which means lover. Dearest lovers of God. This is the way the anonymous gospel storyteller begins the gospel according to Luke. And it's the season for the first 2 chapters of Luke, which read so much like a Broadway musical. While others may have undertaken to compile a narrative of the events exactly as they were passed on to us by the original eyewitnesses, the anonymous gospel storyteller that, for the want of knowing his or her actual name, we call Luke, has put together an opening to his portrayal of Jesus of Nazareth in the grand style of Jewish midrash, with a cast of characters aptly named to put his audiences in mind of some of the Jewish people's greatest heroes. A real blast from the past with a view toward a new kind of future. Over the years, those who have heard Luke's account have added a musical score, which includes Zachariah's Benedictus, Elizabeth's Hail Mary, as well as Mary's Magnificat. And that's just the first chapter. The gospel we call Luke came into life in the 1st century, at the very end of the first century, when the Christian community was still coming to terms with who and what this Jesus of Nazareth was and might mean for their community. The gospel comes to us in the 9th or possibly the early 10th decade of the Common Era, or some 60 years after Jesus' earthly life has ended. And it opens with a magical story, a story never intended to be viewed as history. Let me say that again. It opens with a magical birth story that was never intended to be viewed as history. The story is filled with supernatural signs. There are angels that sing, fetuses that can communicate with one another, a virgin that conceives, and even a post-menopausal pregnancy. This is the stuff of mythology. It is the author of Luke's attempt to capture in parabolic language the essence of who he thinks Jesus is, namely the one through whom God may be experienced. Like I said before, the author is unknown to us. The name Luke was given decades, perhaps even a century after the book was actually written. All we really know about the author is that he, by his own admission, is not, let me repeat that, he is not, by his own admission, an eyewitness to the events of Jesus' life. We know from his own writing that he wrote excellent Greek, a feat only accomplished by the most highly educated people of his day. And based on the way in which he wrote and the phrases he used, experts have concluded that he was, in all likelihood, a Gentile convert to Judaism, who then became a follower of the way. By his own account, he's writing not an accurate, detailed account, but rather an account that will make Theophilus, the lovers of God, believe. He has a particular purpose in mind with his tale. He wants the lovers of God to believe. His account takes the form of a series of short stories that are easily dramatized. Some New Testament scholars believe that these stories were told over and over again and again in very dramatic ways, ways designed to hold the interest of the audience. To this day, the first 2 chapters of the Gospel according to Luke lend themselves well to the production of a pageant, especially if those pageants are supplemented with a few characters borrowed from the Gospel according to another anonymous author that we know by the name of Matthew. Despite the fact that these 2 stories are irreconcilable, we kind of mold them together, mix up the facts, dress a bunch of kids up, and there's the pageant. Pageants are designed to be irresistibly magical, and none more so than Christmas pageants. The first chapter, according to the Gospel of Luke, has miraculous power. The narrative has the power to turn each and every one of us into time travelers. But we don't travel back to the first century. Just the mere mention of Zachariah and Elizabeth, and we're off on a journey that takes us back to every Christmas pageant that we have ever been a part of. Zachariah, Elizabeth, Mary, and the angel Gabriel do it to me every single time. I can't help it. The names alone are enough to conjure up memories of little boys in their father's bathrobes, those fluffy, oversized bathrobes, or sometimes they have those shiny, lovely smoking jackets, borrowed from a grandfather, no doubt. And then there's little girls adorned with glitter-strewn cardboard wings and reams of blue cloth for the lucky little girl who gets to play Mary. Over the years, I've helped to produce and direct so many Christmas pageants. So when I read the first chapter of Luke, I can't keep from smiling as my mind wanders back in time to nervous children hoping that they will remember their lines. I can see the shepherd boys banging one another with broom handles that we're expected to imagine as shepherd's crooks. And I can see darling little girls looking over their shoulder at their newly acquired sparkly wings. I suspect that the magical power of Christmas pageants comes from their ability to get us in the mood for that perfect Christmas. That perfect Christmas that we are so eager to create. It doesn't matter if we are as young as the tots who perform in these pageants or as old as Elizabeth and Zachariah. We have all been trained to desire the perfect Christmas for ourselves and for those we love. I suspect that a great deal of the hustle and bustle that we'll all engage in over the next few weeks will, in one way or another, be all about the quest for the perfect Christmas, however you imagine that to be. Every year finds us trying to replicate some perfect mythical Christmas that exists in our memories of Christmases past. And some of us just can't help ourselves. We are trapped in the hopeless task of trying to create the perfect Christmas that we never managed to pull off in the past, but that we continue to hope is waiting for us out there somewhere. So we scurry about, trying our best to come up with the ingredients that will enable us to embody the very spirit of Christmas. And by the time Christmas Eve arrives, the level of expectation is positively palpable, with each of us seeking, grasping for the perfect Christmas of our longing. Christmas time has the power to bring to mind those moments we remember, whether they are real or simply imagined. In some ways, it's those imagined memories that we are trying to grasp. It's as if Christmas time allows us, just for a moment, to step outside of time as we travel back and forth, searching our memories and our imaginations for that longed-for moment that will fill us with the spirit of a positively Dickensian Christmas, past, present, and future. I remember one Christmas, long ago, when my own quest for the perfect Christmas was overwhelming. And no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't get into the spirit of the season. The season of Advent is usually my favorite season of the church year, but that year, the Advent blues offered not hope and joy, but sadness and longing. The parties and the dinners I attended just didn't seem festive enough, and the Christmas carols left me cold. It just didn't feel like Christmas was supposed to feel. It was all so very ordinary. No matter how hard I tried, the festivities fell flat. And all I could feel was this deep sense of emptiness. I was longing for something, and I didn't know what I was longing for, but somewhere out there or back there in the mists of time were the memories or impressions of the perfect Christmas that reality just wasn't living up to. And I was miserable. And I was in no mood for a Christmas pageant that was being presented on the afternoon of Christmas Eve, But some friends insisted that I put away my bah humbug attitude and come along to church to help out with the preparations. I said, no, I'm going to go to the midnight service. There won't be any kids there. And they insisted, come for the pageant. Their kids were in it. I was trapped. So I painted a smile on my face and I resolved to endure this amateur production. When we arrived, the preparations for the pageant were in a state of pure bedlam. The madness wasn't helped by the presence of the baby Jesus. Tradition dictated that the youngest member of the congregation be given the honor of playing the role of baby Jesus. And this particular baby Jesus was just 8 weeks old, and according to her mother, the baby suffered from colic. I, at the time, had absolutely no idea what colic was. But there was something about the look in her mother's eyes that compelled me to take the baby away from her. I've always been pretty good with babies, and I was sure that I could soothe this baby. Besides, when you're holding a baby, nobody asks you to do anything else. So I figured if I just got this baby away from all this madness that was going on around us, I could calm her down. Well, the church had a little nursery that was attached to the sanctuary, so off I went with the baby Jesus in my arms. It took some doing, but after some furious rocking in a rocking chair, the baby Jesus lay quietly looking up at me. She was a strange little Jesus. She had the most striking red hair and the most amazing green eyes. And she frowned up at me as if to say, "Who are you?" Well, not wanting her to start screaming all over again, I rocked a little faster. Those of you who know about colicky babies, you know you have to rock really, really fast. And it seems like the faster you rock, the more content they become. And finally, after much intense rocking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, the scowling baby Jesus finally smiled up at me. I don't know, maybe she had gas, I don't know. But her smile was overwhelming. And with the sounds of dueling shepherds and excited angels out in the narthex, I sat looking at this strange little Christ child. And suddenly I was filled with the glory of, I don't know, dare I say God? Filled to overflowing, connected in some mysterious way to something so much bigger than myself. It was as if in that little child lay all the hopes and dreams of all the earth. At that very moment, I held eternity in my arms. Dear Theophilus, dear lovers of God, if you're scurrying about during this season of Advent, trying to create or to recreate the perfect Christmas, if you're longing for loved ones that are long gone or loved ones that are far away, if you're preoccupied by what the future may hold, if you know an emptiness deep inside, it's time to stop and take a good look around you. Advent and Christmas time is a time to be present to the here and the now. Advent and Christmas time, like all time, is eternal time. And it is true. The empty place inside cannot be filled by longing for what was or for what is to come. The empty place inside can only be filled here and now, in this moment, by the mystery that inhabits eternity. Eternity, that which has no beginning and no end. Eternity, a quality of being that is beyond time and space. Eternity, a state of being in which we are permeable to the sacred. Eternity that exists here and now in this moment. In the words of the mystics, let God be born in you. Christ comes to us in the flesh here and now, not in the perfection we seek, but in the imperfections of the ordinary stuff of life. What I didn't know all those years ago, what's taken me almost a lifetime to understand, or even to begin to understand, is that what I was doing back then, there in that nursery, rocking that child back and forth, was praying. Praying is being open to the presence of the sacred in this very moment. That's the good news of the birth of the baby under the stars. That's the good news of each and every birth. For at your birth, the angel chorus sang to the glory of your Creator. You are the hope of the world. In you, divinity has chosen to dwell. In you, the mystery that we call God lives. In you lives the hope for peace on earth and goodwill to all. On this day, in this place, in this time, indeed, each and every day, all we have to do is open ourselves. Open ourselves. And let the empty space be a manger to receive the Christ child, to receive the love that is God. Let that emptiness be filled with the spirit of Christmas that is our God, Emmanuel, with us, in us, through us, and beyond us, Emmanuel. Open yourselves to the sacred in the ordinary stuff of life. Open yourselves to the present moment, for it is here and now that the reality of the one who is love longs to be born in you. This is the peace, the shalom. Let there be peace in, with, through, and beyond you. Peace in each greeting, peace in each embrace, peace over each meal, peace in every attempt to be helpful, peace in each song you sing and dance that you dance, peace in every gift wrapped and unwrapped, peace in every tear shed and each memory that you savor, peace in every act of kindness, peace in the love you share, peace, dear Theophilus, peace in the ordinary stuff of life, for in that peace, dear lovers of God, you will discover the sacred, the Holy One, who is the Christ for whom we long. Here and now, in this moment. Amen.